at time, so we might as well go ahead and get started. I have a lot to say. We good, Mike?
Yeah.
All right.
Making sure you have what you need.
I think we're all set. Thanks. Yeah, so welcome to the first of the little sessions of SENG this year. And thanks for coming to spend this time with me. I'm hoping that you'll take away some things that are super useful. Some of you picked up copies of my book as you came in. It's a little booklet. I'm not really going to talk very much about this. If you have questions about it, let me know. But this is my model for healthy relationships that I have accessible in all different ways. So this is Stop Trying to Stay Ahead of Them, a coach approach to working with gifted and high successful kids. And Kate Arms is me, and if you don't recognize those letters, PCC and CBCC, those are coaching credentials. The PCC means that I have the mid-level of certification for the International Coach Federation, and CBCC is from my particular school of coaching, which in the corporate world, those two sets of letters make me respectable. I run a coaching company called Single Hire Coaching. Our mission is creating cultures where people thrive, and I always say that's at work, at home, and in your own head. So obviously here we're going to be talking about at home and in your own head. And for the educators in the room, I'm going to talk a lot about family and the adult-child relationship. And I'm going to leave you to do the work of translating how it might show up in a classroom, because that's not my expertise. I do completely 100% adult learning. I do a lot of teaching with adults, except at home, where I do a lot of, obviously, working with my own family as a teacher. I have been creating communities that are designed to help people's lives be better since middle school. I was a lonely outlier kid, and I was afraid of rejection and shy and different and lonely. And one day I looked around my middle school and I realized that there were a whole bunch of other lonely outlier kids, many of whom had gravitated to the drama club. And that if I got over my own fear of self-rejection and got over my own struggle with meeting people who were different than me, I could actually catalyze us from a bunch of misfits to a group of friends. And I've been doing that work personally and professionally ever since. Why do I care about my sexual population? First, part of why I was an outlier is that I am somewhere in the highly plus gifted range. I'm also mildly dyslexic. How much is unclear, because I compensate well enough that nobody ever did any assessments, but I can see it in the way that I function in the world, and I see it really dramatically in my kids. I have 4 kids. All of them are gifted. At least 2 of them on the sort of way up there scale. 2 of them are autistic. All of them are dyslexic. So I'm in this space all the time. And I've spent a whole lot of the last few years really working on taking what I know as a coach and applying it at home and seeing fantastic results, and then starting to teach it to other parents and to my clients who are parents, and they're seeing fantastic results. So everything that I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to talk about it at an abstract high level. But this stuff makes a difference in people's day-to-day lives and how they feel about themselves. And now I'm gonna cry, because I'm married, like I care so much about this. So, I will get to, I hope, some actual tools. The Listen to Learn, Inspire, Facilitate, Teach is the model. This is my book that's coming out in September. These 4 pieces I will get to, and these are the what of this coach approach, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it Because part of what makes it magic is actually the why and the how. And I'm going to spend more time on the why and the how. You guys are so creative and resourceful that if you have a good understanding of the why and a decent take on the how, you're going to figure out the what. Because part of the thing about the what is actually that it happens in the moment with the particular person that you're dealing with, and you have to make it up on the spot anyway. I have lots of tips and tools and techniques, and if you were my client, we would spend lots of time getting into the details, but that's not what I'm here for today. I want to really focus on the why and the how. The why is that the modern parenting crisis is that we don't have a clue what future we are raising our kids for. As schools, we don't know what the world that our kids are going to go into looks like. We do not know what skills they need. We do not know what content they need. We do not know the details. What we do know is that it is entirely different than what we needed when we were young adults leaving school. It's entirely different than what we need now. We are already living in the past, and our children are coming up into an emerging future, and we don't know what it looks like. And this is scary for us. It makes it super tempting for us to be, well, here's the thing I do know, so we're going to fixate on this. And actually, the coach approach allows us to sort of dance in a place where we're like, okay, there's this great wide adventure called the future, and we're moving from today into tomorrow together. How can we do that skillfully in a way that brings us as little terror and as much ease as possible? Anybody in the room familiar with VUCA as a phrase and a descriptor? Okay, so I spend a lot of time working in the corporate world, and this is all over the corporate world. It comes to us from the people who brought us snafu and fubar, the US military. And it is used to describe originally it was described to describe modern warfare in the post 9/11 era in particular. It also describes the economic climate that our corporate world is dealing with, and it describes the reality of our families and our schools and the world that we are struggling with. It is volatile. Things change like that. Twice exceptional kids, like double so. It is unpredictable. I woke up one morning and discovered that all my kids were on Discord, and I had never heard of Discord. I knew there was something that was going to be a replacement for the fact that nobody cool is on Facebook anymore. Certainly nobody under like 12 years younger than me is on Facebook anymore. Facebook is for old people. Discord is where it's at for the kids. Who knew what that was going to look like? I couldn't have prepared them for that. Complex. So many moving pieces. So many moving parts. So much diversity that we're working on trying to include. So much difference that we're trying to figure out how to navigate. So many moving pieces. And ambiguous. It's really not clear that there are any right answers. There might be some obviously wrong answers, but everything else is sort of like, okay, where's my best guess about this one? I don't know, I have to see. And that's actually the modern reality in all of our lives. And that is destabilizing and hard to plan for. It's extra especially hard with gifted and twice exceptional kids, because they're outliers and the norm structures don't fit. Because they're developing fast in one area and slowly in another area. A gifted kid with a passion is going so far down the path so fast there's no way anybody else can keep up. Asynchronous kids are complicated, more so than, and every child has some level of asynchronous, but our kids have it more. It's just a moreness. They get ahead of us in areas we can't predict. This destabilizes us. And it destabilizes them because they count on us to be the grown-ups and to know what to do with this. And they are ahead of us. The title of this talk is Stop trying to stay ahead of them because we can't. And we have to accept that reality. And they crave it. And we have to help them be okay with us not being ahead of them. They see the big problems in the world. We cannot hide from our children the complexity of our economic world, our geopolitical world, our multicultural world, and climate change. And we have to give them some skills that they can navigate that with. And all of this means that frustration, anxiety, depression are all of the mental health issues that come as a result of trying to exert control in an unstable world show up in these kids. One of the things I see over and over and over again is that highly gifted kids and gifted kids in general, plus a mismatch and plus of our need to control as we actually create twice exceptionality in these kids. Even if they didn't start out twice exceptional, they end up with mental health challenges that we end up having to deal with so often. And my hope is that this approach will combat some of that. So, basic assumption that I'm going to make is that every family has basically the same goals for their kids. While the kids are at home, we want the home to be a place of physical and emotional support with as much joy as possible. And we want to get the kids ready for life as adults. We want them to have some way of providing financial security for themselves, for them to be basically happy with life. And we want them to want to come home for the holidays. We do not want them to come and visit us out of a sense of obligation. We want them to come because coming home enriches their lives. And if we remember that those are the goals and let go of our attachment to the specific manifestation of the outcome of those goals, we go right so often. One of the things that we do when we are scared is we think that we know what a financially secure life looks like and what it requires. And we want them to get those skills because we know that that worked for our generation or should be working for us. And if we can let go of what it looks like and focus on what's the big picture here. This is the big picture. So coaching is applied positive psychology. And positive psychology is the science of what goes right in life and how do we make life most worth living. The process of coaching is we have a conversation, we get some insight, we come up with an action plan. That's in a conversation between the coach and the person they're coaching. Then the person who's being coached goes off and tries to implement that action step. And it either goes well or it doesn't. And then they come back to the coach and we extract together the learning from it going well or not going. We then look at what's the new challenge, do some work to get some insight there, and then come up with the next action plan. And it is a totally iterative process. And the magic is not in the conversation. The magic is in what they do with the conversation afterwards. So if you think about this as a parenting conversation or as a conversation with a teacher, conversation opening up possibilities, coming up with some ideas, broadening the perspective, coming up with a next step to try, then we send them off to do it. And then whether they fail or succeed, come back to us and we go, okay, so what did we learn from that? What else do we have that we can put into the system to help come up with a creative solution? And what's the next step? Totally iterative. Coaching starts with the relationships and not with the tasks. The pair that is the kid or the client and coach or parent, that pair creates a relationship that is slides on the right, that is safe enough to be courageous. And then, if the relationship is safe enough to be courageous, then the magic starts to happen. So, the foundations of a coaching perspective. And so, this is adopted for really in the relationship with a child. Children are naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. They are wired to learn, wired to problem solve, wired to figure things out, and we can trust that. We can trust that they actually have the same goals for themselves as we do at the level of abstraction that I talked about earlier. Their ideas about what it will take for them to have that are entirely different than ours and are age dependent. What do you want to be when you grow up is a really bizarre question to ask a child because the child doesn't know anything about what the possibilities are. So they're naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. They just don't have a whole lot of information, and the older they get, the more information that they have. They're always working to put together the pieces of the puzzle of all of the information that they do have to try and understand how the world works and how to get what they want. Successful parenting focuses on the whole child. Now, we're at SENG, which is about the emotional needs of the gifted. So I'm guessing that you already are bought into this. Emotional, social, relationship-based, mind, body, emotion, spirit, it's the whole child. We have to build from what exists right now. There is no other place to start. Sometimes, particularly for kids who are outside the norm, their parents looking at them, actually accepting what exists right now as the reality is the hardest part. Children develop on their own timelines. You can bring a horse to water, you can't make it drink. You can give a child information, you can't make it learn. If we can trust that they will develop, they will succeed, and that where they are right now is the right place for them to be in the process because it's the only place they can be, and we hold open that trust for them that they will get there. When they can't see it for themselves, we are standing beside them as their advocates, as their rock. And that is a huge gift. We panic because we see them and we see how fast they're growing and we see them launching at 18 or earlier. And we go, but they have so many things they need to learn before they're living on their own. And we forget how unformed we were when we left home. Yeah, right? We were not formed when we left home. So, this piece I want to sort of step on just a little bit. Learning and growth require vulnerability, willingness to look at one's shortcomings, and the ability to recover from mistakes and failures. How many of us have a really easy time with that in our lives? Raise your hand if this is easy. Okay. Children's jobs to grow up as human beings mean that they are learning and growing all the time. And in fact, we tell them often that they need to be learning more of the time than they are. This is hard work. And the reason that children are wired to learn through play is because play makes it easier to do the hard work. Play keeps you from noticing how hard the work is because you're not focused on the hard. My daughter plays ringette. We're Canadian, and ringette is kind of like hockey in that it's an ice sport. And you play with a ring that's about this size and a stick that you stick in the ring, you sprint it, and you have to pass it and shoot. And it is easy enough to use that ring, unlike hockey where actually puck control is incredibly difficult. If you get your stick in the ring and skate slowly, you can hang on to the ring.
Playing ringette is the fastest way to teach a child to skate, because skating is hard. And trying to get that ring in the net is fun. And I have watched children this high who can't skate figure out how to skate because there are other children there playing that ring and they want to get that ring that badly. It's like a toddler learning to walk. When it looks like fun and you can see other people having fun, it's easier to motivate getting there than it is when you just see how hard it is. Coaching is about the relationship. One of the most powerful conversations that you can have with your kids is, how do we want to be as a family? Now, as an adult coach, working with adult clients, we have this conversation. How do we want to be when we're working through this problem? We want to be respectful, we want to be open, we want to have a little fun. Kids, you have to use age-appropriate language. You have to get to sort of where they want to be, getting their imaginations in, getting them drawing pictures, getting them coming up with a family motto, family coat of arms, something to get them playfully engaged with the question at whatever level is age appropriate for how we want to be as a family. Then gives you something you can go back to when we're struggling. How do we want to be together as a family? So you can build the relationship from a foundation of understanding. This is something that gets redesigned. With my family, I do this before school every year in September. We actually sit down and we do a little session where we talk about how we want to be as a family this year. Is it different than last year? Our thing this year was, when we treat our family as friends, we have more fun. Especially when we are in conflict, is really powerful. Conflict is so inevitable because human beings are not the same. And how we are in conflict is such a huge part of creating safety so that we can be courageous. And honestly, if we teach our children how to handle conflict well, that is probably the most important skill that gets in the way of people's adult lives, is not being able to handle conflict well. So, here's a tool one. This comes from John Gauntlet's work with couples. He is amazing, but he's identified 4 categories of toxic behaviors. And even better, the antidotes to the poison. Criticism, that's not feedback or complaint. Criticism is making a complaint about character. You're lazy. You're irresponsible. That's criticism. The antidote is, hey, there's this thing going on in our relationship that is making it hard for me to feel like I can trust you, and I'd really like to be able to trust you. Can we have a chat? Is now a good time? Soft startup. Facts. On Thursday, you said that you would do the dishes this weekend. In my life, it's really busy. Sometimes the dishes pack up for a couple of days, right? It's Monday morning and I woke up and the dishes weren't done. Facts. I statements. I feel disrespected because you made a commitment to me that wasn't taken for. Need. I need you to follow through on your commitments. Request. If you're going to have difficulty meeting a commitment, let me know as soon as possible. That's the antidote to criticism. Stonewalling is disengaging from the conversation, disengaging from the relationship. Sometimes that consists of physically walking away. Often it consists of just, I don't care, I'm not paying attention, I'm just going to let this walk over and I'm not actually engaged anymore. Stonewalling happens when we are triggered, when we're activated for, I can't engage in this, I'm overwhelmed. We're emotionally flooded. So the antidote to stonewalling is actually to take care of our own physiological response to that upset and to self-soothe and then to re-engage. One of the really powerful things to do if we're working against stonewalling is to negotiate a timeout. So to say, I'm flooded right now. I need 5 minutes to go and regroup, and then can we pick up this conversation? And you can do that with your kids. You can do that with anybody. We just need to take a break, can we? It's so much better to negotiate a timeout than to just walk away. Because the negotiation explains why you're doing it. If you say to your kid, Mommy's upset right now, and when Mommy's upset, Mommy has a tendency to yell, and you don't like it when Mommy yells, so Mommy's gonna go and take 5 minutes to go for a walk and get that yelling stuff out of her system so that we can come back and Mommy can have a nice conversation. The kids get that. Defensiveness is the whole, no, I didn't do that. Kids, it shows up all the time, he did it. That wasn't, in my house, for about 4 years, Mr. Nobody did everything that went wrong in the house. And the antidote to defensiveness is actually to take responsibility for your part of the problem. Because defensiveness comes from, I don't want to face the shame of having disappointed myself and of not having lived up to my commitment to myself to be a good person. And conflict is almost never caused by only one person. And so if we can move from, well, obviously I'm a good person, so I didn't do it, so it must be all your fault, to, oh, so between us, I guess we kind of made a mess here, huh? Suddenly everything's deflated a little bit and it becomes easier to engage. Contempt is the one that is hardest for us to deal with if we see it in ourselves as parents. Contempt is that place of seeing that you're better than someone as a human. Not as a I'm more skilled than someone, but as an I'm better than. And I have disdain for you, and it's a form of hatred. And if we notice that we are feeling like we're better in some way than our kids, and we recognize that as a form of hatred, it is like shame spiral for years, right? Like, it is awful. The antidote to this, and it's so valuable to do it proactively, is to build a culture of appreciation. Keynote this morning, strengths and assets based. In the middle of conflict, what I appreciate about this is you care so much about getting it right. What I appreciate about your perspective is you don't see it the way I do, so I'm learning something. We catch them doing things right, and we state it and we acknowledge it. Super powerful. And also a culture of appreciation for ourselves. So part of that designing how do we want to be as a family, if we can teach our kids this explicitly, they're probably going to come up with, we want to be fun, we want to be having the fun, we want to have the engagement. They're probably going to be focused on that. They might be focused in learning, they might be focused in some of the things that matter to us about their eventual self-sufficiency. But they're likely to be focused on what is going to make now more fun, which is a great gift that we should accept from them. And then we can say, and I want us to be applying all these antidotes when we're in conflict. And then we get to teach them, we get to build it part of the culture. The nice thing about bright kids is we can start teaching this explicitly way earlier than we think we can. One of the problems that I have faced with my autistic kids is that all of the social skills stuff that they have encountered has been geared to kids where it's assumed that there's an intellectual deficiency that goes along with the social challenges. And I have been teaching my, now 12, but since 9 years old, exactly the same stuff I teach my adult clients in this behavior. And he gets it in a way that the stuff that was designed for kids just doesn't. So we can trust, like this is one of the gifts that they give us, is that we can actually, it serves us to get metacognitive with these kids in a way that we can actually lean into. We can judge, are you getting this? Is this too much for them? And if we're there present with them, we can figure out what language we can use with them. We underestimate these kids at our peril. There's a foundation that I'm about to get to. But really what we're going to be looking at is listening to learn. We want to know who they are. Because we don't know who they are. We don't know who they're becoming. They don't know either. And so listening in a way that extracts that information from them so that we all learn more about them together. Fantastic. Inspiration is huge. Once again, the keynote this morning, that piece about kids know who they aren't, but they don't know who they can be. We're not quite sure what who they can be will look like, but we certainly have a sense that they can be something amazing. And if we can inspire them, we can reduce some of their fears. So much of what gets in the way of our relationships and their learning is actually that they're terrified and they're scared of not being able to make themselves proud of themselves, make us proud of them. Facilitate. There are skills that we can use to help get that learning out and to help them accomplish their goals. And teach comes last. When we're scared, we lead with teach. We lead with, I know something and you need to know it. The coach approach, teaching is a part of it, but it's not where we come from. Listening to learn. What are we trying to learn? We're trying to learn what matters to them, what are their goals, and what is getting in their way. They are going to learn what matters to them as they grow. But we can start seeing what matters to them early. Sometimes incredibly early. One of my autistic kids, I noticed within the first 3 weeks of his life that he was obsessed with patterns. If you were wearing a shirt that had a regular pattern on it, he was there figuring it out. Sure enough, a few years later, he's in the doctor's office, and the doctor has a magnetic board with alphabet letters on it, and he is like, there is no J on that board, because he's recognized the alphabet and it's missing a piece of the pattern. So we're listening to them. Their goals are going to emerge, but we can keep listening for what's next. And what is getting in their way is so crucial. There are 3 kinds of listening, and it's really useful to sort of separate them. Self is when we listen to what somebody's saying and we are thinking about how we're going to respond. When the kid comes in and is like, Mommy, I want this game and I want it now, and my brain goes to, I don't know what that game is, I don't know where I'm going to, how I'm going to find time to research it, I don't know whether it's age appropriate, I don't know whether it's a good idea. Am I listening to my child? No. No. We actually do need to listen to ourselves. We need to know when our boundaries are crossed. We need to know what our values are. And we need to know, often we sort of get gut instincts that come from listening to ourselves. But if that's the primary way we listen in the world, we don't actually learn anything about what's out there. All we're learning about is what's inside. Content is what people talk about when they're talking about active listening. The content, the words that they're saying. What is it that they're trying to actually communicate on that literal level? The ones where you can go, so what I think I'm hearing you say is, and then you paraphrase it back to them, and you say, did I get it? That's actually really valuable listening. If we don't listen at that level, we miss a lot of really important information. And if you've ever practiced that kind of, here's what I think you're saying, am I right? You probably discovered how often you're wrong. it's actually really hard because we all use language differently. Language is contextual learning, so our map of what a word means is actually based on every time we've experienced that word sort of coming together. Kids have very narrow understandings of words because they've heard them in a limited number of times. They don't have flexibility about the ambiguity of language because they've only heard this word in this context once or twice. And so that's all the information that they have. I have almost 50 years worth of context for a huge number of words. I'm in that play differently. But also I've done something different. I have gone, empathy, compassion, pity are all kind of in the same ballpark. And I have come up with, based on the context that I've heard them used, what makes them different. Which is not the same as what any one of you in this room thinks is what makes them different, because your context and my context are different. One of the most powerful coaching questions out there is, what does that word mean to you? Because I don't know. The context is just everything else that's going on in the environment. What do we know about who they are? What are we sensing? What are we getting at? What's not being talked about? When we're working with infants, we do this all the time because we have no content. The content is a cry or a smile. And so we're trying to interpret that context all the time. The more verbal our kids get, the more we forget to look at the context because we are focused on understanding the content. Often this contextual understanding comes in those intuitive gut hits. And so if we've been trained in a rational, empirical, educational model to value the things that we can justify with evidence that we can point to that can be measured, it's very easy to discount the wisdom of that information. That information is always approximate, it's always a guess. When we bring it into the conversation, it's really useful to say, so I'm getting this feeling that. What do you think? Even with kids. I get this feeling that there's something you're not telling me. What's up with that? Is there? Once again, sort of playing with it at age appropriateness, we can go there a lot. So the coach approach to listening is to spend a little bit of time on the self and a lot of time on the content and the context. So here I'm going to start actually giving some just crisp coaching tools. In the realm of inspiration, we're talking about motivation. Fundamentally, what we want to do is inject positivity. What gets in the way most of the time is fear. We have a negativity bias, somewhere between 4 and 8, depending on how safe and trusting the environment feels. Somewhere between 4 and 8 positive experiences balance out every negative experience. We just, as human beings, respond more to potential threats than we do to things going right. The impact of that is when we respond to a potential threat, we go into defensive mode. Fight, flight, freeze. Our adrenaline and our cortisol get spiked, and our prefrontal cortexes go offline. We stop having access to our creativity, to our resourcefulness. All our body is working to do is to get us out of that dangerous situation. Unfortunately, the unknown counts as a dangerous situation, and learning inevitably is the process of moving into the unknown. If we knew it, we wouldn't have to learn it. So we are constantly, and our kids are constantly faced with, how do we get over that negativity bias? Once again, play is huge. If you've got a really triggered kid, Sometimes the best thing to do is to get them talking about an extracurricular activity that they love before you even try and teach anything. Get them de-escalated, then move on. So, if you just remembered that injecting positivity as a habit is something that you want to do when you're working with kids, it's so powerful. And not just with kids, with all the grown-ups in your life too. And with yourself. Acknowledging and validating are two very coach-specific ways of injecting positivity. Acknowledging is when you see a positive quality in somebody, you name it aloud to them. You were thoughtful. You were kind. You were courageous. You were generous. We do it literally that length of sentence. We do not say, when you do this for your brother, you are kind, because that implies that the rest of the time they're not kind. And our smart kids get that like that. You're not really a kind person except when you do this. No, you are kind. I saw you do something nice for your brother, that's my evidence that they are kind. I don't have to share that with them. I can just appreciate what they did and the kindness that I saw manifest, and I can give them the gift of knowing that they are kind. This is not aspirational. This is not, I say to you, you're kind, because I want you to think that you're kind so that you become kind. This is, I glimpsed kindness in you, and I am telling you that I saw it. Validating is making their experience true. One of the things that kids do all the time is make incorrect assumptions about how the world works based on incomplete information. Actually, that's one of the things that people do, because none of us have complete information. It's just kids have more incompleteness. And it's so easy to say, no, you're wrong. How much more powerful is it to say, you know, given that happened last week and that happened yesterday, it makes total sense that you see it this way. And I know that based on this thing I saw yesterday, there's more to it than that. I made them right. Based on what you know about the world, absolutely you are correct. And there's a little more to it. And I have this other piece. We've validated the truth of their experience. We don't have to agree with them in order to validate them. This, by the way, this validating, use that in your romantic relationships and it will get you so far. Just saying. Facilitating is what people typically think of when they think about going to coaching. I got a goal, I'm not making progress on it, help. And goal setting is important. Helping kids figure out what their goals are. Because going from, I want to be a grown-up someday that is able to live my life and be happy about it, to what do I need to do today in 5th grade is a really huge cognitive leap. And so figuring out, what might be the next step? Keeping moving while striving to meet goals. This is in that space of, what's the next step? No, not the big chunk, actually the next step. What's getting in your way? What are the voices in your head that are getting in your way? Where is your shame or your not knowing or your concern about fitting in with the kids at school? How's that getting in the way? And then dealing with missed goals. I've got some questions coming up about how we can deal with missed goals that come straight from the world of coaching that are super, super useful. So, as kids are working on goal setting and they don't know what the big pictures are, this is a really useful framework for keeping in mind. This is my reworking of a framework from Martin Seligman, his work, particularly in his book Flourish, looking at the 5 elements of flourishing. A lot of people who know Martin Seligman's work in positive psychology only know his authentic happiness work, which is really focused on positive emotions. His work is developed and he's like, that's not actually enough, there's more to it than that. So G is for good feelings. So gamer because so many of our kids are, right? And so this is great, particularly if you've got kids who are gamers, use this framework. G is for good feelings. This is the positive emotion. If we don't have enough good feelings in our lives, we don't feel good about our lives. Good feelings are complicated. It's not just happiness. Expanding the breadth of what counts as good feelings can be really powerful for our kids. Pride in the work that I've done is a good feeling. Joy, contentment. Happiness, obviously. A is for accomplishments. Everybody needs to feel like we have a win. A lot of the goals that we have for our kids are big goals. We need to celebrate the little milestones that they achieve on their way there. They need to learn that that multiplication problem was hard and I did it, and I can pat myself on the back for it. I don't have to immediately go to, so what's the next one? Oh, that's more digits. Great. We don't have to go there. We can be like, you know what? You've been struggling with 2-digit multiplication and you got it. This is the look on no hands moment. Right? Toddlers and preschoolers are so good at asking us to acknowledge their accomplishments. And if we don't do it, then they stop asking and we still have to do it for them. And it's going to make a difference. We all as human beings need to know that we matter, that it is meaningful to the people around us and know that we are here. Not just that there's somebody in our role, not just that there's somebody doing what we've done, but that we matter. All of the life coaching stuff in meaning and purpose lives in this. Meaningfulness and making a difference has a cognitive aspect and an emotional aspect. There's a feeling of this feels meaningful that we get when we're in the middle of something sometimes. And there's a, you know what, this is hard and it matters to me, so I'm going to do it. That doesn't feel good in the moment at all, except in that, no, there's a sense of pride that I'm committed to it. It's a much more complicated piece, but it also matters. Teenagers really struggle with this A, M, and E piece because we make it hard for them to accomplish at the level that they're capable. And we make it hard for them to have impact on the big picture issues that they care about. Facilitating ways for our kids to do things that matter to them is a really powerful gift that we can give them. E is for effective. E is for that sense that I am doing this. I am making this happen. This is a sense of agency, a sense of ownership. This is a sense that I am leading my own life, not that life is happening and I sometimes have an impact. And R is for relationships. We all need that sense of connection. We all need that sense of love, safety, and belonging. Relationships are a slightly different thing than the other four because relationships are often the vehicle for accomplishment in the other four arenas. In addition to being of value in their own right. Every human being needs a sufficient quantity of all five of these in their life to feel like they're flourishing. exactly how much of each of them you need is totally unique to you. But if you are helping your kids set their goals, how can we make more of the one that you're missing the most of in the next month is a great place to start. Because they don't know more than what's here now. Now is the only place we can start. If we can figure out how to improve one of those in the next minute, day, week, month, we are progressing towards the big abstract goals that we hold for our kids. Okay, I'm gonna sort of run pretty quickly through the next things because I've only got 10 minutes left. How do we keep them moving when they're having difficulty? Powerful questions, vanquishing their inner demons, and de-triggering. Powerful questions are open-ended. They are about what's important, not about why. If the only thing that comes out of this session is that you stop asking children, why did you do that? I will have won. Because why did you do that says, you did something wrong, explain it to me. And then they are going to justify it. And they're going to make themselves right for having done it. And we will not get much learning out of that. So here's a bunch of questions that are super powerful. What is important to you about that? What's up with that? This is Ross Green's drilling down question. It's a great one because it gets that informality that is sometimes really powerful with kids. What's going on there? What do you already know? If a kid says to you in response to a question, I don't know, what do you already know? Okay, I get it. You don't know everything. You don't know much. You feel like you don't know. What do you already know? We tap into their resourcefulness. What's next? And then I talked about what does that mean to you earlier. The more that we can use their language, the better, because that helps them feel seen and heard and safe. We all have inner voices that get in our way, and our kids are no different. They're just less concrete for kids. As they get older, they get more concrete. This is the one where you hear your mom's voice in the back of your head saying, you're not good enough to do that. So, I know I'm creating that voice in my kids. This is, but that's what happens. And what we need to do is we need to give them tools to deal with it because we are creating that and we can't stop that. That's actually the way human beings learn, right? Great tool for kids is there are voices of fear and there are voices of cheerleading. And they show up, and sometimes the voice of fear is in the driver's seat, and sometimes the voice of cheerleading is in the driver's seat. You may not actually notice it, but I can hear it, that one's in the driver's seat. The movie Inside Out is a great way for starting this conversation because it is actually looking at those voices in the head. If you can get them to draw or make art about this character and this character that is inside their head when they're driving the show, you can get them to start separating themselves from those voices and start having access to they are more than just that voice of fear. That point of separation is a great way for starting to de-trigger them. When we get emotionally flooded, we need to self-soothe. We need to separate ourselves from that voice of fear. We need to find our own inner resourcefulness. Helping our kids to do that is super, super powerful. The things that make them feel settled, pay attention to them and give them to them. When you can see that they're upset, suggest them, encourage them, notice. When they're triggered, they may not take it, right? So part of the way that we help this is when they're not triggered, we remind them. The way that this process of learning, the way that this process of learning works for for kids and for adults is we give them the information they can't use it. We give them the information they can't use it. We give them the information they can't use it. We give them the information they can't use it. We give them the information they notice that they're not using it. But they can't use it. We give them the information they notice that they're not using it, but they, and they still can't use it. We give them the information they notice and they try and it doesn't go well. We give them the information. We give them the information. They try again to get better at it. So we just keep feeding them the information and we just trust that they will develop on their own timeline and they will get it. If you don't sound like a broken record, you're not doing this stuff right. Okay, these 6 questions I really do want to get in. When kids fail on their goals, if we say you didn't try hard enough, we are doing them such a disservice. Because if these questions are answered in ways to which the answers are all in support of their work, then how hard they try will be enough. And if these aren't in place, there is no way they can try hard enough. Are there skills the child doesn't have that are required to do the work? Probably. Is the child really motivated to do the work? Because if they're not, I don't care how good they are at it, they're not actually going to do it. Or if they do, they're going to do it half-heartedly. Does the child have access to the tools and environments necessary to do the work? It is shocking, however, how often the answer to that question is no. And the tools and the environment are our job as the grown-ups. Do the tools and environments support the child's motivation to do the work? Is the social situation supporting the child's ability to do the work? If they don't feel safe enough to be courageous, they're not going to be learning. And is the social situation supporting the child's motivation to do the work? If I have the choice of being on the playground playing soccer or fixing my math problem, I want to be out there playing soccer, and you can make me sit in the classroom, but you can't make me learn. Or if you do, you're going to get a side order of resentment that goes along with it. And that is not going to serve our relationship in the long term. We can push our kids to do the things they don't want to do. And if we do that today, tomorrow we have to deal with that side order of resentment. So the teaching piece I'm really going to skip over. Basically, our goal is if they've identified skills that they need, if there are things that they don't know, we can design ways for them to get those skills. But we should be turning it over to them as soon as possible and making sure that they know that these skills are in service of their agenda. What do they want? Not what we want. The wrong question is, how do I get my kids to anything? The better question is, what is getting in the way of my kids' success? We've got a couple minutes. What questions do you have for me?
When does the book come out?
September 1st. And the book is a deeper dive on the theory, not so much on the practice. There's another book in the planning that will have some of the practice, but really, honestly, that thing I said at the beginning about if you get the why and the how, this sort of philosophical approach, you guys will figure out the what.
Yeah, so for the missed goals, is that more for us to understand why that didn't happen, or is that something that we could sort of discuss with them in terms
It
of...
is so powerful to discuss it with them because otherwise they think it's their fault. And if you discuss it with them and they see that it's contextual and they're working within a situation that provides them with limits, they don't take it on as this is something that's wrong with me. Thank you, great question. Yes?
A question I often get is, how does coaching differentiate from therapy, and how does this practice?
It's a great question, and the answer is far less clear-cut than it used to be because positive psychology has taken inroads in the clinical practice of therapy in a way that it just didn't exist when coaching first started emerging as a profession. So it used to be that the applied positive psychology stuff was almost all in the coaching world, and that there was a healing deficit model in therapy. And therapy has gotten a lot broader than that. Different therapists have different balances of where they work. The thing that makes coaching that doesn't always show up in the clinical psychology mode is if it doesn't have a homework assignment, it's just a nice conversation. Coaching is always in service of action in the world.
I love what you're saying, especially with the positive psychology component of it. My son is actually back in California at a social skills camp where they use tons of positive psychology. Like every interaction they have with the kids is, you know, like if they interrupt because they can't control their impulses, that was unexpected, right? Like even they're modeling this constantly, and I find that I'm changing my parenting. This is his second summer. But like, I feel like I have to give and give and give so much for Thrice Exceptional, right? Like mild ASD, ADHD, clinically significant ADHD, and gifted, skipped, young.
Yeah.
But I'm feeling like he doesn't want to homeschool. He wants to go to school, super extroverted kid. But I feel like I have to constantly like fill his bucket all the time with the positivity to be able to go out there and deal with slings and arrows in middle school. You know,
So here's what
I'm exhausted. You know?
So here's what I want to offer to you. You need those gamer goals for yourself. One sub-element of the relationship goal is that you want to have that relationship with your son that is positive. And one element of that is injecting positivity into that relationship for him because it serves you. But that is only one element of what is going to make you flourish. And the rest of that stuff actually matters to you and is necessary for his thriving. Because he will pick up on you not flourishing and he will learn to do what you do and not what you say because kids. And that question that you ask is the heart of what I do as a coach with parents of these kids, is help them do the rest of it because we get these diagnoses and the next thing we know we are trying to fix our kids. Then the next thing we know we burn out and we collapse and we don't know where to go for help.
Not an advocate all the time.
Yes.
I'm being an advocate. I want to actually enjoy them sometimes.
Yes. Yes. So, Jen Merrill, who's in the back, is talking to us about being your own superhero. Tomorrow, Jen and I do a lot of work together because that question right there is the one that motivates absolutely everything I do with parents. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I will put this up. This is how to find me.